What raid in Destiny 2 that was taken out do you miss the most? Was it Leviathan? Or maybe was it Scourge of the Past? Either way, I think we'll all admit that there's at least one raid that was removed from Destiny 2 that we wish we could get back. And paired with that, there's even more weapons that were taken away. And that's the topic of today's video. We're going to be going over every single raid weapon that was removed from Destiny 2. With the delay of Final Shape, one thing I would love to see them do would be bring back all the raids in the DCV. Is that copium? Maybe. But let's proceed. If you end up liking this video, make sure to hit the like button, and if you're new, go ahead and subscribe, as we'd love to have you, and I appreciate you guys so much. Thank you. As a quick heads up, we aren't going to be talking about exotics that are still in the kiosk. Let's start off with the Leviathan raid. I know there's a few weapons that immediately come to your mind, preferably one that starts with an M and is 2 words. Close your eyes and imagine the gun I'm talking about. The good old Mob Justice? Just kidding, we'll get to what was on your mind in just a little bit. The Mob Justice was a very fast-firing SMG that came from the days of static rolls in Destiny 2. You had a choice between Pulse Monitor and Ambitious Assassin paired with Moving Target. It wasn't anything that was too insane, but it was a pretty cool weapon for its time. Next we have the Conspirator. The thing that I remember about this scout rifle was using it to cross-shoot the Scions in the Leviathan raid. This scout rifle hit decently hard for back in the day, and in the era before you could add full auto to anything in your settings, it was nice to have the option to make this full auto. Pairing this with Dragonfly made this a pretty good replacement for Nameless Midnight in the Does Not Compute for those who remember. Moving on, we have the Ghost Primus auto rifle. In an era of team shooting and double primaries, auto rifles became one of the most supreme weapon types to use. Yes, I'm looking at you, Uriel's gift, for those that remember. This was a pretty cool option back in the day. Admittedly, this is one I used a little less than some of its other counterparts, but I know there are some that were die-hard Ghost Primus fans. You could toggle between high impact reserves and Ambitious Assassin, and that was paired with Under Pressure. Overall, it was a really cool weapon and it looked amazing. Let's next talk about a weapon that I love not for its ability or how good it was, but for its sound? You know which one I'm about to say. The Inaugural Address. This weapon looked great, it performed great, and it had a unique sound too that I loved. When you died to it in Crucible, you knew exactly what killed you without even looking. Comment down below if you remember hearing this gun in your nightmares. This weapon had an option between Outlaw and Ambitious Assassin, and then you could pair either of those with Kill Clip. Back in this era, having Outlaw and Kill Clip felt amazing. Moving on, let's talk about one of my favorite weapons in the Leviathan family. The Alone is a God sniper rifle. This sniper rifle was really good and it felt awesome to use. The only thing that hurt this sniper for me back in the day was the fact that it was born in the double primary era. This meant that this weapon, despite being a special weapon, now was actually a heavy weapon and had to compete with a ton of other options. Despite this, I still found uses for the sniper in PvE and PvP. It came with the option between Triple Tap and Ambitious Assassin paired with Snapshot, which made it feel super snappy. There's a lot of diehard Alone is a God fans, so if you're one of them, comment below. Next, let's talk about a weapon that doesn't get much love. I personally have never heard one person say, "I wish the It Stared Back would come back." Well, this sword was the first raid sword in the history of Destiny, so this is a piece of history we're looking at here. Outside of being a piece of history, this sword was really just okay. It had Whirlwind and Relentless, which was pretty cool, but overall, it was just meh. Be honest, let me know in the comments below if you even remember this weapon. Let's next talk about one of the best weapons in the Year 1 Destiny 2 era. Sins of the Past. Really, any rocket with cluster bombs performed insanely well in this era of gaming, but Sins of the Past was even better due to it having auto-loading holster. This was the DPS weapon to use back in the day, or even for just a ton of ACT clear at once. Even though this weapon would just be average when compared to today's rockets, this was the king of its era. Lastly, let's talk about the weapon that you've been waiting to hear since we started talking about the Leviathan weapons. Arguably one of the best hand cannons ever, held in the same regard as the OG Fatebringer. This weapon was used all the way up until it was sunset, where you could no longer bring its power up to the current level. It was one of the only hand cannons with Rampage, DFA being the other from Tree of Probabilities, and it also had Outlaw as well. This thing was an absolute beast and will never be forgotten about. Some of you may be familiar with Geology already from when they brought us Raid Zone back with the Crota Zen raid. Well, together we're back again to make sure that we have all of your hygiene needs covered. The two biggest stereotypes for us Destiny players is 1, we don't touch any grass, and 2, we don't shower. Well, I got good news for you. We're here to change that. Geology is a 25-time award-winning personalized skincare company that creates simple and effective skincare and hair care routines customized just for you. How can they do that? Well, you take a 30-second quiz and they do the rest. You guys see me. I have a full head of hair, and because of that, I need a lot of products to take care of it. They have shampoos, conditioners, and my favorite product, the Smoothing Hair Co-Wash. They also have body washes, face washes, deodorants, and much more. Click on my link or scan the QR code on the screen for 70%, yes I said 70, off of your personalized skincare trial set, and get an additional 50% off of your skin, hair, and body add-on products when added on to the trial. Thank you again to Geology for partnering with me, and now let's get back into the video. Moving on, let's talk about everybody's favorite raid, the Eater of Worlds. There were two weapons that came from this raid. The first was the I Am Alive grenade launcher. This weapon didn't really have a moment in the spotlight, but it wasn't an awful weapon. Auto-loading holster was cool, but moving target never really did it for me. It was really just a weapon. The second and only other weapon from Eater of Worlds was the more popular Zenith of your kind shotgun. Unlike the GL, I did every once in a while use the shotgun. You could choose between pulse monitor and auto-loading holster, and that was paired with threat detector. It also had rifled barrel as one of its options. This came out right before the Ikello shotgun from Escalation Protocol, so this was a pretty decent shotgun option for its time. Let's now take some time to talk about my favorite raid in Destiny 2 history, the Spire of Stars. I missed this raid so much, mainly due to just how cool I think it was and how fun the mechanics were. The first weapon was only the second raid sidearm ever in Destiny 2's history, the Last of the Legion. I actually really enjoyed using this sidearm. In the double primary era, this weapon felt pretty good, but probably would be pretty average in today's Destiny 2. It had a very unique way of firing a 3-round burst that made it feel really good. To make it even better, this weapon fired in full auto and you could swap between Ambitious Assassin and Zen Moment. This was my favorite weapon from Eater of Worlds and Spire of Stars. To wrap up the year 1 weapons, let's talk about the final raid weapon from this year, the Emperor's Envy Fusion Rifle. The main thing I remember about this weapon was how cool it looked. This fusion rifle was okay in terms of performance, but once again, being buried in the heavy slot along with some heavy hitters being introduced in Warmind like the EP shotgun, the sniper, and the Whisper of the Worm meant this weapon just couldn't compete. The most standout perk for this weapon was having Rampage, which in general just felt good in vanilla Destiny 2, and this was paired with Ambitious Assassin or Moving Target. Liquid Coils was also pretty cool on this weapon. Moving on, it's now time to talk about the year 2 raids in the Forsaken era, better known as the best era of Destiny 2. This era came with 3 raids, 2 which were removed from the game. The first was Scourge of the Past, and that's where we're gonna start. The raid came out during Black Armory. The first weapon we're gonna be covering is the Bellowing Giant Rocket Launcher. Honestly, this weapon wasn't that bad, but once again it came out in an era where there's just too much competition to compete. It did roll with cluster bombs, which was pretty good for things like Riven at the time. Plus, this raid introduced a certain heavy weapon that I'm sure a lot of you still remember that would take Destiny 2 by storm once people learned how potent it was, the Anarchy. Moving on, let's talk about the Tempered Dynamo Fusion Rifle. This was another decent weapon that seems like it's been forgotten as time has passed. It was mainly overshadowed by a name that you may have forgotten about, the Arantel. Comment below if you remember getting killed by this. I remember getting a roll with opening shot and liquid coils on this raid fusion, hoping that it would compete with some of its counterparts, but it never really quite lived up. Next, let's talk about the No Feeling Scout Rifle. I think the thing that people remember most about this scout rifle is it rolling with box breathing back in the era of box breathing being insane. This meant that the TTK with this scout rifle was extremely fast. I'm sure there's a lot of people that would love to see this scout rifle make a return. It was honestly really fun to use. Lastly, from Scourge of the Past, we have the most well-known legendary weapon, the Threat Level. Better known as the kinetic version of the Ikello shotgun from Escalation Protocol. Like the Ikello shotgun, this weapon also could roll with Trench Barrel, which at the time was by far the best shotgun perk you could have in the game. This shotgun was a beast and was by far the most sought after legendary weapon from this raid. This era ultimately came to a close when Bungie nerfed Trench Barrel, but let me know if you remember this era back in the day. Finally, we have in my opinion a raid that sits in an interesting position. I feel like this isn't a raid that is universally missed, but those that love Crown of Sorrows really love Crown of Sorrows. The weapons in this raid were good. Unfortunately, they just weren't Mountaintop, Recluse, or Anarchy, so no one really used them that often. Starting with my favorite of all the weapons, we have the Bane of Sorrow. I really did enjoy having Feeding Frenzy and Rampage on it personally. It had some serious competition, but overall it was a pretty cool weapon. Next, we have a weapon I've never heard anybody talk about missing, the Calici Noblesse? If I said that right. If you're the one person that misses this weapon, let me know in the comments. I don't really have much to say about this weapon. It was a scout rifle. It performed meh in PvP, and it didn't really have a home in PvE. It just kinda was. Next, we have the Emperor's Courtesy Shotgun. The thing that I'm sure you remember about this shotgun was that its curated roll could roll with 1-2 punch. This was the era where 1-2 punch was king and Trench Barrel kinda got left in the past. This was a great DPS shotgun and a lot of people had a lot of fun using this weapon, including myself. Lastly, to finish things off, we have one of my favorite named weapons of all the raid weapons, the Galrun's Right Hand Auto Rifle. It also looked very, very beautiful. While I love the name and the looks, I wasn't actually that huge on this weapon. Despite this, it did perform pretty decently in PvP. The curated roll had overflow, which I do remember being decently fun. Also, outlaw and multi-kill clip was pretty fun in this era as well. Overall, it was a decent weapon, but another thing that kinda got forgotten about as time went on as we had such powerful alternatives. And with that, we've made it to the end of our list. My question for you is, which raid weapon that was removed do you miss the most, and which raid do you wish Bungie would bring back? Thanks for watching.